Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am Kris. This was a donated request from Yasin Muhammad. This is, I already said his name on the first one, and it's illegal to repeat it on the next videos. The man who gave it all, the first, Dr. Omar. Suleiman. We went back 5 seconds. So, not much to say on this one. Let's just jump right into it. There's a thanks button on the channel. You can donate, subscribe, give the thumbs up bare minimum. Alright? Video.
That will be enough to cause Musab radiallahu ta'ala anhu to relent. However, Musab radiallahu ta'ala anhu is unwavering in his faith. Now, by the way, I want to pause here for a moment. Musab radiallahu ta'ala anhu is different from those other companions that are being tortured, because the others, as the ulama say, they never tasted ni'mah. They never tasted that blessing of this dunya the way that Musab radiallahu anhu did. I mean, he had everything, and he's a young man. I mean, and he's privileged, right? So typically that type would break quickly, right? Musab radiallahu anhu is not breaking, and the entire dunya is being taken away from him, and that was his whole identity, was dunya. His whole identity was material wealth, and that's all taken away from him, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. In that time in solitary confinement, Musab radiallahu ta'ala anhu would read the Quran that he memorized from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Musab radiallahu anhu had a beautiful voice in the recitation of the Quran. The Sahaba used to love to hear Musab radiallahu anhu recite the Quran. So think about that chamber in the home. He's there, he's reciting the Quran, he's praying. He does not yell at his mother, never yells at his mother, does not become aggressive with her. He's simply waiting until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a way out for him. So while Musab radiallahu ta'ala anhu is in this situation, somehow, Musab radiallahu ta'ala anhu comes to know that the Muslims are being given permission to migrate to Abyssinia. So that shows you how early in Islam he is, that this is before the first migration to Al-Habasha. Musab radiallahu ta'ala anhu comes to know of the news in some way that they're going towards Abyssinia, that they're going to Al-Habasha. And so Musab radiallahu ta'ala anhu waits until the guard that has been appointed to him is asleep, and he manages to escape and join that group of Muslims that are making their hijrah, making their way to Abyssinia, the first batch of them. So he goes out and he escapes, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, with nothing but the clothes on his back and whatever wealth could sustain him for the journey, and no family whatsoever. Going to be a stranger in a land that he has never been to, while he was a trendsetter in the society that he grew up in. He makes his way to Habasha, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. At some point in Abyssinia, or shortly after, he marries a woman by the name of Hamna bint Jahsh, radiallahu anha. Hamna is the sister of Zainab bint Jahsh, radiallahu ta'ala anha, who would become the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the future sister-in-law of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hamna bint Jahsh, marries Musab radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and Musab basically starts to piece his life back together in this post-persecution period. Now, while they were in Abyssinia, they hear that the people of Mecca have become Muslims. So that rumor spreads that the people of Mecca have embraced Islam. Mus'ab radiallahu ta'ala anhu was amongst those that came back on the basis of that rumor and came to unfortunately find out that it was not true. He gets to Mecca. Who does he visit first when he gets back to Mecca? Who do you all think? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Before he goes to his mother, he goes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then he goes to his mother. And his mother says to him when she sees him, she's very emotional obviously, because she wants him back now. I mean, maybe him being in Abyssinia has caused her to have a change of heart. So she says to him, وَيْحَكَ يَا بُنَيْ, woe to you, O my son, أَتَعُودُ مِنَ الْحَبَشَ وَتَأْتِي إِلَى مُحَمَّدٍ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ قَبْلَ أَن تَزُورَنِي. You come back from Abyssinia and you visit Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam before you visit me. You return to Muhammad, this man sallallahu alaihi wasallam, before you even come to me. And he said, حُبُّ مُحَمَّدٍ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ أُمَّهُ أَعْظَمُ مِنْ حُبِّكَ. The love of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, oh my mother, is greater than your love. And listen to what he says. He says, أَنْتِ أَخْرَجْتِينِي مِنَ الرَّحِمِ إِلَى الدُّنْيَا وَقَدْ أَخْرَجَنِي اللَّهُ بِهِ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. Profound. He said, you, O my mother, brought me out of your womb into this world. And Allah, through him, brought me from darkness to light. And when you ask, why is the Prophet ﷺ more beloved to you than anyone else. Through him, Allah brought you from darkness to light. So Musab radiallahu anhu is saying, look, I love you and I appreciate you. And he doesn't bring up the torture or the deprivation or any of that. But what Allah did for me through him is greater than what Allah did for me through you. And so I have to honor him. So his mother then says to him, Ya Musab, leave this deen of yours. Come back to your deen and you can have your wealth back. You can have your clothes. You can have your status. And a mother is the first one to forgive her child. I'll forgive you for everything that you've done. Just come back to your deen. Come back to your...
But, I mean, that's nice. But you're going to have all these other people that are going to say that one, wealth enticed him more than anything else. Two, some people are just not going to like him because of what he did. And I forgot my last point. My last point was spectacular. Let's just act like I said it and everyone's like, that was really good. That was a great point. Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. Back to the video.
Way, come back to your home, come back to your mother, and you'll get your wealth again, you'll get your clothes, you'll get all of this. Musab radiallahu ta'ala anhu says, rather you...
I got it. But you're turning your back on something that you feel is right. That was the third. You're turning your back on what made you feel like you were on the right path. It made you feel satisfied, full, and complete. It brought you joy. Like, I can't give that up and go back to my old life after having experienced this joy. You realize that this just isn't satisfying. You've known it your whole life. You went over here, and now this, the gold chains, the money, the wealth, the silk, doesn't feel the same anymore. I don't care about it anymore. You know, maybe I grew out of it. Or maybe I feel like I found something better. That's what it was.
Mother, come back to Allah, and Allah will forgive you, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant you al-Jannah. So you come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you come to the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Then after trying that, she tries hostility and realizes that Mus'ab radiallahu anhu is a man who, unlike Uthman radiallahu anhu and Abdurrahman bin Auf radiallahu anhu, some of those other rich companions who earned and who became rich over time, Mus'ab radiallahu anhu had it from his childhood, right? And she says to him, listen, if you continue on this way, Wallahi, I will prohibit you from receiving every last dirham that was bequeathed to you. All your father's wealth, everything I have for you, it's gone. She said, your clothes, you'll leave them here. They'll be sold off to the markets and given to someone else. Your shoes, your perfume, everything that you ever owned and everything that you were destined to own is gone. Mus'ab radiallahu anhu says, I'm okay with that. What Allah has is better. Then she tries to threaten him again. She says, I'm going to call your uncles and we're going to put you back in that dungeon. This time Mus'ab radiallahu ta'ala anhu has a bit of a feistier answer. Mus'ab radiallahu anhu says, listen, mom, if you put me back in that dungeon, I promise you that no guard is going to last a day or night with me. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to fight this time. I'll kill whoever you put in charge. I will find a way to kill him. So don't waste your time. This time I'm not going to be as subservient and obedient as I was the last time in this situation. So she was shocked by his answer. So subhanAllah, and this is very painful for him to do, he says to her basically, you leave me alone and I'll leave you alone. You know, you don't try to hinder this for me and stop me and hurt me, and I'm going to leave you alone. I'm not going to bother you anymore, oh my mother. Still give her the ihsan, still give her the excellence, the good treatment, so long as she accepts. But at the end of the day, if this is where you're at, then let's make this easy. And I'm not going to bother you with my Islam. You don't bother me with shirk. We go our separate ways. She says to Mus'ab radiallahu ta'ala anhu, leave behind every single one of your clothes and every single dirham that you have. Musab radiallahu anhu says, take it all. I want nothing. He walks out of that house, having been destined to be the richest boy in Mecca, walking out with not a dirham to his name anymore. You think about that level of sacrifice and that level of determination and that level of tarbiyah, that level of mentorship and will that had to be generated in him to be able to do that, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. This is a turning point for him. This is a mindset shift, right? That I am going to turn my back on everything. And there's a finality to this particular conversation with his mother. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him. His mother, unfortunately, would die in kufr. She would die in disbelief. And that hurt Musab radiallahu ta'ala anhu. But this was the last encounter between Musab radiallahu ta'ala anhu and his mother. And that's the pain when you go back to the narration of Miqdad, that you people think that you want to be from the first, you wish you were Sahaba, but you don't know the pain and the anguish that we went through when we followed our Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Musab radiallahu ta'ala anhu no longer has the beautiful clothes, no longer has the perfume, no longer has the silk, no longer has the jewelry, has none of that. He's just a man from amongst the Muslims, and he's basically tribeless. So subhanAllah, he has been reduced in terms of status suddenly to the same level of those people that were considered the low ones of society, and Mus'ab radiallahu ta'ala anhu is okay with that. He's noted amongst the companions for what? A devout student of the Prophet ﷺ. So he stays close to the Prophet ﷺ. And there's one narration that when he was in Abyssinia, he was staying close to the elders amongst the companions that migrated so he could gain from them what he missed while he was imprisoned in his mother's home. So he's a student. He's staying close to the Prophet ﷺ. Every word that came out of the mouth of the Prophet ﷺ in terms of the Quran, Mus'ab radiallahu anhu was immediately one of those that would memorize it and that would perfect its recitation. So he's someone that would lead the companions in salah frequently, and they enjoyed his recitation. He had a beautiful sense of logic and wisdom and speech. And so he's prominent in that sense that he's respected amongst the companions, and everyone knows what he has sacrificed. Everyone understands what this young man has given up to be a Muslim, to be a follower of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then comes 11 years after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam received revelation, and it is the Hajj season. And here the Prophet ﷺ is with Abu Bakr and Ali, may Allah be pleased with them both. And they're going around in the Hajj, the Hijjah, the 11th year after the revelation is received. And they're talking to all of these different outsiders that are coming for the Hajj at night. And they're calling them to Islam. Prophet ﷺ is secretly meeting all of these groups of people with Abu Bakr and Ali, may Allah be pleased with them, and calling them to Islam. Until the Prophet ﷺ hears about these 6 young men. 6 men from the city of Yathrib, which we know as Madinatun Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam now. And no one really considered them to be seniors. They're looked at as lower ones of the region. Their fathers have killed each other off. These young men are all in their 20s, some of them barely 30, and they have no power in the region whatsoever. But the Prophet ﷺ spares no one when it comes to his da'wah, when it comes to calling them to Islam. He's relentless, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in making sure that every single person that came for the Hajj is hearing from him about what this message of his is. So he goes out to them at night, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he meets these 6 young men. And he says to them, "Are you from Yathrib?" They say yes. And the Prophet ﷺ says, "So you're the allies of the Jewish people of Yathrib, people of the book?" They said yes. So the Prophet ﷺ said, "Sit with me and listen to me, and let me tell you about my way." So he tells them, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about Tawheed. He tells them about the Quran. He tells them about the hereafter. And they say to each other that this is what the Jewish communities in Medina were talking about, a prophet that is to come. Let us beat them to it and embrace him first. 6 young men who, subhanAllah, are going to change history. And no one can anticipate it, that amongst this crowds of Hajj, this group of people that have no power whatsoever, sitting with the Prophet ﷺ, who's barely living at this point, are going to change humanity forever. So the Prophet ﷺ, when he calls them, they say to the Prophet ﷺ, "How do we join your way?" The Prophet ﷺ tells them how to become Muslim. They embrace Islam. And they say to the Prophet ﷺ, "Arsil ma'ana man yu'allimu aqwamana." Can you send someone with you, or with us, that will teach our people? can you pick one of your companions that's going to go with us back to Yathrib and be our teacher? The Prophet ﷺ taps Musab radiallahu anhu. He says, Musab ibn Umair is going to go with you to Medina, to Yathrib at the time, and he'll teach your people Islam. These 6 young men walk back with Musab radiallahu anhu. By the way, when Musab radiallahu anhu died, I calculated it, Musab radiallahu ta'ala anhu was probably about 32 or 33 years old when he was killed, when he was martyred. So he's very young, just like they are. Young, handsome man, lost everything. In Medina, they may have heard some of the legends of what he used to own or what it may be, but anyway, he's still going to go be a foreigner. But what an important job. Mus'ab radiallahu anhu has the responsibility of exploring the one city that seemed to open its hands to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and teach them about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Mus'ab radiallahu ta'ala anhu goes with them to Yathrib at the time. Yathrib, or Al-Madinah, and we'll get to this when we talk about the Ansar, inshallah ta'ala, in season 2 in some detail, but it was basically a bunch of military camps. They killed each other. I mean, there wasn't much left from the elders of Yathrib because they all killed each other over silliness, tribalism. And it's a very unstable situation. You can't really mess up there. Mus'ab radiallahu ta'ala anhu goes, and the person that is entrusted with him is As'ad ibn Zurara radiallahu ta'ala anhu. As'ad ibn Zurara being from the Ansar of the Prophet ﷺ, probably the first of the Ansar that we will cover. He takes Mus'ab radiallahu ta'ala anhu, starts to slowly introduce him to these small groups of people so he could teach them about Islam. As they're sitting with one group of people in Yathrib, a man comes and he's holding a spear and he's walking right towards Mus'ab. So As'ad ibn Zurara, he taps him and he says, listen, قَدْ جَاءَكَ سَيِّدٌ مِنَ الْأَسْيَادِ. He said, a leader amongst the leaders is coming to you. That guy that's coming to you with a spear, clearly not very happy about you. He's a serious person and he has a lot of influence. He says, if he follows you, a lot of people here will follow you. So be patient, take it easy. Mus'ab radiallahu anhu sits. The man comes up to him, Usayd ibn Hudayr radiallahu ta'ala anhu. This is Usayd ibn Hudayr carrying a spear, and he says to him, what are you teaching my people? He says, I'm going to give you the option to leave in peace, or you can leave the hard way. Points to the spear. Either you get up and go, or this is about to go right through you. Mus'ab radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he says, how about this? I'll make you a deal. Very calmly, he says to him, listen, I can get up and leave, but why don't you sit with me and just listen to what I have to say? Just hear me out. And if you don't like what I have to say, I'll get up and I'll go. It's a pretty risky offer that he's making to Usayd, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, that sit with me, listen to me, hear me out, hear what I have to say. If you don't like it, I'll get up and I'll leave. I'll honor that, and we won't have to get to the violent part of this. Usayd radiallahu anhu, he calms down from the good akhlaq, the good mannerisms of Mus'ab. Mus'ab basically, he basically disarms him with his kindness. Very calmly, smile on his face, listen, I understand. And he honors him because he says, I will obey you. If you don't like what I have to say, I'll get up and I'll leave. I'm not going to challenge your authority, I'll listen to you. Just sit down and listen to me. So Usayd puts down a spear, he sits down with Mus'ab radiallahu anhu. Mus'ab radiallahu anhu recites some of the Quran to him. Surah Al-A'la, some of the small surahs of the Quran from Juz' Amma. Tells him about the basics of the deen. Usayd radiallahu ta'ala anhu is looking at Mus'ab and he's overwhelmed by the message. And he says, this is beautiful. He says, this is beautiful. He says, so if I want to join your way, how do I join your way? Mus'ab radiallahu anhu tells him, the only thing you'll do is you'll take a shower, put on a fresh pair of clothes, and you'll repeat after me, say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Usayd gets up, he picks up his spear, he goes back home, he showers, he changes his clothes, he puts on some of the best perfume. He comes back to Mus'ab radiallahu anhu while the water is still dripping from him, and he says, what do I say after you? He says, say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. He says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Usayd then says, listen, there's a man that I know. If he becomes Muslim, la aslama qawmah. His whole people will become Muslim. So subhanAllah, he went from threatening him with a spear, like to being a hindrance to the da'wah, to now suddenly being a da'i in a moment, right? Like now, let me go introduce you to someone and he's going to turn everyone Muslim if he becomes Muslim. These are young men, subhanAllah. but he's the chief of his people. They're the only ones that are left at this time. So Usayd,
I'm going to kill you. 15 minutes later. Hey, can you come talk to my friend? He needs to hear what you have to say.
Radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he takes Mus'ab radiallahu anhu to Sa'd ibn Mu'adh radiallahu anhu. Sa'd ibn Mu'adh is powerful. Also, by the way, about 31 years old at this point. FYI, chief of his people. I'm just trying to illustrate to you how young, because he was about 36 when he was killed. How young these people were, but they were the asyad, they were the leaders of their people. So he takes, he goes to Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, Usayd ibn Hudayr, and he says to him, "Awaqad sami'at? Did you hear about it?" He said, "What is it?" He said, "There are some people that are trying to do something to my nephew." Who is his nephew? As'ad ibn Zurara. He didn't say what it was, but they're going to do something to him. So the understanding of Sa'd is heightened, alert. Someone's trying to hurt my nephew. He wants to wake him up. He wants to get him really excited about something. There's some people trying to do something to your nephew. He said, "Let's go." Sa'd radiallahu anhu goes with Usayd ibn Hudayr radiallahu anhu. He finds Mus'ab radiallahu anhu sitting with As'ad ibn Zurara radiallahu anhu, his nephew, and he's ready to kill him. And then he says, "What's going on?" Mus'ab radiallahu anhu says, "Nothing. I'm just teaching him some words." And Usayd says, "Sit down and listen to what he has to say." Sa'd ibn Mu'adh sits down. Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, subhanAllah, this was the condition of the hearts of the Ansar. He said, "This is amazing, beautiful. This is the truth. How do I become Muslim?" He said, "Just take a shower, say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Do ghusl, and that's all you have to do is say the shahadatain." So now it's Mus'ab, Usayd, and Sa'd. And he said, there is one more person we need to call to Islam, and then Medina's done. Yathrib is going to be all Muslim. He said, "Who is that?" Sa'd ibn Ubadah. They go
back a little bit. All right, we're going to end it there. A little bit further, but it's okay. You know what? I'm going to go back there. What are you going to say about that? 10 seconds backwards in time. All right. Just like that. I'm going to kill you. Running back after a shower. What am I going to say? What am I going to say? I'm still wet. Come on, I'm drying up here. Come on, tell me what I got to say. And the panic that was going through that guy. Do I still have to be wet while I'm saying this? Come on, come on. That was good. All right. We're going to end it here. But we will be back for part 3. That'll be tomorrow for you. It'll be in about 15 minutes for me. So until then, you have a good day, have a good night.